Next up, we have the Donatos, who are, hang on one second here. Brilliant. They're brilliant, for sure.
And better when we're together.
And so, let's see. As a society, it says here, we appear to be losing our appetite for commitment, both in our personal and professional relationships. We'll discuss this trend and why we're concerned. Craig is CEO of Oodle, an internet startup that runs the marketplace on Facebook. Think Craigslist meets Facebook. Kristen, formerly a product manager at Microsoft, and has just completed a graduate degree in family therapy. So we all know about some of the Donato kids and their thespian pursuits. Very talented as well. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So without further ado, let's hear it for the Donatos.
So my husband and I, together for the first time ever, and our this is a very rough draft. We were winging it together with your support. But we're very interested in the subject of commitment. And it started with me because as a marriage and family therapist, I started noticing marriages crumbling around me in my friendships. I was studying the divorce rate and why marriages fail and why they don't. And was also, after spending 4 years at college at University of San Francisco, spending a lot of time talking to 20-somethings about their views on marriage, which nobody was wanting to get married anymore. And I was really struck by this. So I was really trying to look at the subject of commitment and why are people not committing so much anymore.
So as we talked about her research, what was striking to me is a lot of the themes that she was reporting seem just as applicable to the professional life, our professional relationships, the relationships that an employer has with its employees and an employee has with its employers, or its employers. It also was very interesting in that it seemed like it would have some impact to our nation, right? So if we are indeed a society that's losing its appetite for commitment and we have to deal with issues like global warming and a broken political system, what does it mean to have a society that no longer wants to commit to a cause, right? It seemed kind of troubling. So before we jump in, I thought I would just define what we mean by commitment. So how do I do this? There you go. So Kristen and I did a workshop before we got married, and I thought it provided a great definition of what is commitment. And it was the willingness to put the needs of the relationship above the needs of your own, right? So inherent in that definition was the notion of sacrifice, the ability to subjugate your own needs, not to the other person, but to this entity of the relationship.
As I said, I discovered that, as you know, marriage and divorce have sort of stabilized around 50%. Divorce rate is around 50%. What you didn't know that I looked into is that what's actually increasing is the cohabitation rate. And when you cohabitate and don't marry and have children and you separate, those rates are upwards of 70%, and none of that gets tracked. So it's actually, the divorce rate continues to increase, or if you think of it in terms of two people coming together, having a child, and being together. The other thing that's interesting that I found is that the #1 reason for divorce is not infidelity, it's not sex, it's not falling out of love. It's actually just the lack of commitment. That was the #1 reason, 85% the reasons why people were getting divorced. And the other thing that I found is that these rates apply to all demographics across our society, socioeconomically, gender, race, et cetera, and education. And the other thing that we discovered was that the problem is going deeper beyond just marriage, but it's also going into the dating scene and the pre-marriage scene. And what I discovered is that people are dating a lot less one-on-one. They're doing group dates. It's a lot more hooking up, a lot more casual sex. And lots more getting together with friends with benefits. And I've actually been really struck by this. The other thing that I've been struck by is going along with this is an incredible increase in how people communicate via text. And the beauty of text, for men in particular, is that you get a lot of connection without any commitment. And it's very easy to just have these little, you know, hey, what you doing? Which is subtext for, would you like to hook up? And then, and then if somebody's not interested, boom, radio silence. It's very easy to just go quickly to radio silence, and it's done. And now it's a norm. Radio silence means, oh, that person's moved on, and you're supposed to interpret it. And so again, it's a trend and that I'm seeing dramatically, and all the singles I'm talking to from college age up to about 40 are talking about how much harder it is to actually get into a commitment with people now, even for the for like a 2-year relationship.
So not only is the marriage rate declining, right? And people aren't dating anymore. But it struck me as I looked at this that the timeline of that coincided with a chart I saw published by LinkedIn, which is the amount of job hopping we do, right? So within about the same time that the marriage rate started declining, we see the amount of jobs, the first-time jobs that you have, start to take off. So what we see is when we think about the professional relationships we have, right, we're starting to not have a career for life. We're starting to hop and do lots of different jobs. And around this time, we also have employers not committing to their employees, right? No longer about pensions, it's about at-will work, right? So fundamentally, we see commitment leaving, becoming insignificant as it relates to our professional relationships. I also took a look at how this was impacting commitment as it relates to how a government has a relationship with its citizens, right? And it occurred to me that somewhere, I don't know, maybe I guess in the 70s, it became no longer politically acceptable to ask citizens to make sacrifices, right? So back in the 60s, ask not what the country can do for you, but what you can do for the country. Then we started having wars without raising taxes. We started rolling out massive programs. And I looked at, I wanted to say, let me see the chart that shows debt, right? Well, and sure enough, it pretty much mapped the chart you just saw. And it just was striking to me. And here we are, right? I see these things coming on, and I see that we are now in a situation with global warming, raising oil prices, yet our government will not ask us to sacrifice to change the way we use fuel, right? We will not ask for sacrifice.
To the commitment to the government.
Exactly. So why is this happening? And this is a much longer topic, but just to throw some things out there, why we think this is happening. So one thing that's happening is, and this kind of started to kick it off, is the switching costs for changing relationships is going down, right? So both on an economic basis in terms of women having other jobs, right? And also the moral stigma associated with getting a divorce, or the moral stigma of hopping jobs has gone down, right? We're losing our role models for commitment. Most people, and again, I'm not sure what the exact percentage is, but many, many people grow up in a family dominated by divorce, which signals that committed relationships can indeed be broken, right? We go and we work in places where we know we can be laid off at any moment. We're losing our role model and our context for committed relationships. And lastly, this is kind of all rolled up into the culture of me, which is, I think, so beautifully embodied by Facebook, right? The studies and research that Kristen showed that since the 1960s, values and virtue associated with families is slowly being changed and migrated towards virtue of individualism, right? Slowly taking place here.